Hi all, Chris from chriswatsonmusic.com. Today I'm going to start a series of videos all about my works in progress. This song doesn't have a title yet, doesn't have any vocals yet, so we'll just call it Untitled number 1 for now, and let's get started. So we've got a big, nasty rock song here. So obviously the guitars are quite important. So let's have a look at what we've got done with the guitars here. We've got the intro, a little riff that fills in some gaps, and they've got the main riff is actually played on these two guitar parts here. And in the chorus, we fill the sound out with another guitar. So let's have a look at the main riff of what we've actually got, and we'll have a listen to it. So as you can see here, the main riff is basically 2 takes. I like to record all my guitar parts in 1 take through the whole song. I don't really like to, perfect the riff once or perfect the guitar part once and do cut and paste. I try to play all the way through. I just kind of like that. It kind of gives that little sort of variation in the performance throughout the track. Now, what we've got is the two guitar parts here. Now let's have a listen to just one of them by itself. Okay, so I really wanted to fill out the sound. By itself it's a little bit thin, so I've did another take of the guitar, which I've then panned one of them hard left, one of them hard right. And you have a listen to the right side just by itself so you get an idea what it sounds like. You can see it's a slightly darker sound, but you pop the two of them together, you get this. It's a nice big guitar sound. Now to get that guitar tone, I'm using the pod farm software, so we'll have a look at the sort of amp rig that I was using. Now for the left and the right channel guitars, it's the exact same guitar tone. What I've done to really thicken up the sound is I've split it into a dual amp setup. I've used the same amp on both sides, or both sides of the split. What I have done is changed the microphones that are being used on each cabinet and slightly altered the settings. So on the Line 6 tread plate amp head, you can see here's one side of the track. We see it's pretty high with the mids and the treble, and the other side is sort of lower in the mids, much higher in the treble, much higher in the presence. One thing to note is that on both of the tones, the drive setting is only at about 50%. I find when you're doing very riff intensive stuff, sort of like on this track, sometimes you really do want to dial that distortion back, the amount of drive back. It'll clear it up so you can still hear every note that's in the riff. There's guitarists tend to go a little bit crazy when it comes to distortion when they're doing rock music. They think they just drive it up to 11, but it's really not the best idea because you just end up with a mud of noise. So keep that in mind if you're doing guitar heavy rock sort of music. Keep the drive down a little bit. Just use enough drive to give it enough grit, but so you can still make out all the notes in the track. Another thing I like to do is something I heard called a while ago, many a year ago now, called the big guitar theory. Now it's when you're using some fairly similar guitar tones and when guitars are playing fairly similar riffs, but you do some just slight variations to really fill out the sound. And I've done this in the chorus. So you find that these two guitar parts, while they're pretty much the same the entire way through, in the chorus I slightly vary one of the guitars and it really widens out the sound. And if we have a listen, so we'll have a listen to the first guitar part here. So you hear that guitar part there. Once it finishes playing the riff, it goes in and is playing the octaves of the chord for that section of the song. Now, if we have a listen to what I'm doing on the other guitar, you'll see that it is slightly different. Actually goes up and plays, it's still playing the octaves, but it's playing a harmony of the original part. So you hear the two of those together, and you end up with this. It still sounds like one big guitar part, but that harmony really fills it out. Another good little trick, and I've done it here in this song, is when he wants a bit of extra punch coming through for certain sections of the song, in this case the chorus, I've added a third guitar which I've placed right down the middle, and it's a dramatically different tone compared to the other two. So I'll give you an idea. It's also playing the riff, but when it hits the section where it's sitting on the chords, this one's actually just sitting on the chord itself. So it's not just playing the octaves, it's playing a full power chord. Well, it's one extra note, but again, this will fill out the sound. So let's listen to it by itself. You see, I've got some volume automation in here as well. Those open chords that I hit, again, just to add a bit of extra texture to the track, it's tended to cut through the mix a little too much and were a bit distracting from the riff, so I just dropped the volume on them slightly. Now if we hear, we'll have a listen to it by itself. We'll do it in the space of the entire mix. I've got the center guitar muted, so first run through on this, we'll just play it with just the two guitars left and right, and then when it gets to the second repeat of that riff, I'll add in the middle guitar and you'll hear how much of a difference it does make. So it just fills out that center channel in the mix, and adds a bit more tonal variation in there too, with it being a much sort of drier, crunchier sort of sound. And again, in the mix though, they all blend in together, and if you're not really listening for it, it does sound like one really, really big guitar. Now this bit's going to sound a little bit strange, but this is a little trick I picked up from my time in high school studying music. Classical music. In the verse, I have a bit of a call and response happening with the guitars. So what is probably going to be the space left for the vocals in the verse, the main riff actually drops out, but in that gap there's a little alternate riff that fills in the background, and the two guitars go back and forth during the verses. I tried it at first without this extra little guitar riff in there, just with the bass filling the gap, and it didn't quite sound right. It needed a little bit more in there, and just add a little bit more variation to it. Each time that the little riff comes in and fills that hole, it goes from being panned hard on one side to being panned on the other, and I've just done that with some automation here on the panning. So let's have a listen to this little part of the song, and you'll get an idea of what it sounds like. And this is a really, really dirty sounding guitar. Let's just solo it, and it's a really messy tone. And again, with the two the two other guitars popped back in, you'll see sort of the interplay that's going on between them. And you'll see, just to show you what I mean, how it didn't quite sound right with this part missing. If I mute this one, and we'll just do the guitar part there, doing this call and response with the bass. Just doesn't quite have that same impact. The dynamic just, it sounds kind of flat. So if we pop it back in, and by having the guitar go back and forth between the left and right speakers, it gives that little bit of movement in the mix and does make it a bit more interesting to listen to.